I'm Emily and this is Made on Mill. In this video, I'll be showing you how to make reusable gift bags. Last December, I found a tablecloth at a thrift store that I thought was the perfect pattern to make reusable gift bags from. So I made those last year and I have a dedicated blog post outlining exactly how to make those, including suggested fabric cuts and measurements. So in this video, I will be showing you how to make a bag that fits a wine bottle. So the finished size of this bag, I have planned to be 4 inches by 4 inches at the bottom, so a square base, and then 14 inches tall. And then I've created a closure system so that there's a nice piece of ruffle fabric that sits above the neck of the wine bottle. So what you'll need for this project is really any material. I suggest a woven material, not a knit or stretch fabric. That'll work best for this. And I definitely recommend you shopping at a thrift store or secondhand store. I have these 2 pieces of fabric here. These are both tablecloths from my grandma's house that we found when we were clearing it out. They were going to be donated, so I figured I'm not going to use them as tablecloths, but I can definitely repurpose them into beautiful reusable gift bags that I can use for years to come. So the gift bag we will be making in this video will fit a wine bottle, as I mentioned, but the process and steps for larger or smaller size bags is generally the same. I like when I find a piece of fabric that I want to make gift bags out of, I will kind of plan my sizes based on the size of the fabric that I thrifted, just so I can maximize the fabric and not have any waste from this. This can be a completely zero waste sewing project if you plan your cuts properly. But this is the fabric I will be using for this wine bag. So it is a quilting cotton. I found this, yes, at a thrift store, and it's I would say like a lighter weight cotton, maybe slightly medium weight, but it's not super light, but yeah, it's definitely a quilter's cotton. And I just love the dark green with the white polka dots. I think that is perfect. Then for the drawstrings that you're going to create, you can either find ribbon already made, you can just tie a ribbon around the outside, like you don't need to incorporate the ribbon into the bag. I found these bias tape pieces at a thrift store as well, and I'm thinking we can use these as ribbons, and the white in this will coordinate with the white polka dots in this fabric here. All right, so the fabric cut that you need if you're making the same size wine bottle reusable gift bag as me is you will need a piece that measures 22.5 inches high, and then the bottom should measure 18 inches wide. Now, if you have a pattern on your fabric that's directional, you want to take that into consideration. So the height of your cut should be 22.5 inches, and then the width or the bottom will be 18 inches wide. All right, let's get started. To start, you will lie your pieces down with the right sides facing each other. And then we will stitch around all 3 sides. However, we are going to leave a small gap at the side here. Okay, I'm going to walk you through my thought process with where to leave the gap. Now, the gap is going to be where we thread our ribbon or string through so we can tighten the bag itself. So I know I want my bag to be a total height of 14 inches. Now I am using a 1/2 inch seam allowance, so at the bottom here I will lose 1/2 inch. So I need to do 14.5 inches, and then since I'm boxing out the bottom of the corners, I'm going to lose an additional 2 inches. So I need to do 14.5 plus 2 inches brings us to 16.5 inches. So this is the point where the top of the bag will be, and then this will fold down at that point. So we need to make sure that there's a channel in here that we can wind our thread. Now, at the bottom here, Remember, we're gonna lose 1/2 inch to seam allowance and then an additional 2 inches to the box corner. So if we go up to 2.5 inches, our wine bottle will sit roughly like this. And I want the tie to be closer to the bottom here. Okay, so we know where this is being folded over, and then we will fold this over by about 1/2 inch so that the raw edges are tucked inside, and so it will sit like that. So I'm thinking we will want the spacing to be around this point here. So if we measure from the bottom of the bag, we can unfold this now. We measure from the bottom. Okay, so where you're gonna put your mark is from the very bottom of the bag, or the edge, bottom edge here, you're gonna measure up to 12.5 inches. So I'm just gonna mark that there. I'm actually gonna put a pin so I don't forget. I don't actually stitch over that. I'll line up my edges properly here first. Okay, so we're at 12.5 will be the first point. And then we will make this 1 inch wide. So the other one will be at 13.5. Okay, so you'll do this on the other side as well. But when you stitch around, you will start at the top, stitching, stop here. Then you'll restart your stitch line, go to the bottom, all the way around, back up. You will mark the same gap here, stop, and start again here, and go to the top. So when you get to that point in your work where you're not stitching along this side seam, you make sure you back stitch. And then you'll cut your thread and restart your stitching line. Okay, so that's what it should look like where you didn't stitch. There is an opening. So now we are going to finish off the seams, and I will show you how to do that. We have our side seams here, and how I'm going to finish them is by opening them up and then pressing them over. So what I mean by this is opening them up like this and then folding the seam under on itself. Simply like that. Then once you fold this over for the full length, you'll press it and then run a top stitching line, and you'll do the same for the other side. Like that, and you'll run a top stitching line once that's pressed and folded over like that. So then what happens at the opening here is we'll have that folded over and pressed like that. And you'll have a nice clean opening with no raw edges. So go ahead and do this to the bottom. Now we are boxing out the corners, so you don't need to worry about getting all the way to the bottom. With that, we're gonna box them out by 2 inches. So you can stop just before this stitching line here. Same with the bottom, you will do the same method of opening them up, folding it over, pressing and stitching. And then, yeah, you don't need to go all the way to the corner because we will be boxing that out. This is what I mean by pressing it down. So that's folded under. And then we will go ahead and stitch both sides down. So very quickly, I'm using the center seam here as a guide, and I'm lining up my presser foot with that center seam, and then I have my stitch width really far left, so that it's actually catching the very edge. But that way on this side, when you look at the seam, the stitching line will be an equal distance from the center seam here, even if my fold wavers a little bit on the inside. I have finished those seams now, so they have been stitched down on the inside, like you can see here, so there's no raw edges. And then if we go to that opening, there it is. So when we pull the string in and out, once the bag is assembled, it's not going to rub on any raw edges and compromise the quality of the bag. Now, our corners at the bottom, remember I said we didn't need to stitch all the way to them, so they are still raw at the corner there, and that's okay because we're going to box the corners, and I'm going to show you how to do that now. So I just realized the bottom measurements of my bag I started with are incorrect. You should actually start with 9 inches, not 18. Regardless, we can carry on and make this bag. It just won't be a wine bottle size, but I'm gonna go ahead and make a separate bag and then show you what that looks like. But the concepts that you apply here are the same. So let's box out these corners. So what you'll do is have your bag inside out, and you will kind of pull your corners so the side seam and then the bottom seam are sitting on top of each other, and then the corner is pushed out here like that. Then you will take your measuring tape, and I had planned to do 2 inches, but you can box them out further if you want, just it will affect the total height of your bag. So from the corner here, make sure everything's lying really flat. I'm gonna mark out 2 inches. So there is your mark on there, and then you will run a stitching line across that. Then we'll trim the excess fabric off. So there are a couple options on how you finish this seam. You can add bias tape if you want. If you had extra bit of your fabric, you could always do a bias tape there, so it'd look really seamless on the inside. I, however, am just simply going to run a zigzag stitch along this raw edge. And I like to go back and forth a few times so it's really secure and it shouldn't fray that way. Okay, go ahead and repeat this for the other corner. Okay, so both corners are boxed out here. Now, we can go ahead and flip it around. And we'll push out those corners at the bottom. And it might be a good time to press this down if you want. Okay, but now I want to work on the top portion of the bag here. So if we measure up from the bottom of the box, like the corner here, that's our seam line where we boxed it out, we're going to measure up along the seam here. So we're going to measure up 14 inches because that is the total height I want for my bag. Okay, so 14 inches is there. And I'll do the same for the other side. Okay, so that's where I want to fold the bag under. So you will, at this point, fold this part of the bag under, putting it inside of the bag, like so. So that is how we will finish the bag, but before we do that, we want to finish this raw edge first. So you'll go ahead and fold this over by 1/2 inch, like this. Then we will stitch this down around the bag. But let me go and press that and then I'll show you. I have pressed the bag. So this is how it's looking now, pressed at the top. And then if you open it up, it is pressed nicely inside as well. And so you can see that raw edge under here is nicely pressed under. So now we will run a stitching line as close to the edge of this seam here as we can get. So if we look at the side here, there is our hole for our drawstring that we will add in the bottom of the seam, or that folded bit inside is sitting about a 1/4 inch below that. So you'll run your stitching line around there. Once we're done that, we will run a second stitching line that will sit about a 1/4 inch above the opening here, and we'll run that around. But let's do this one first and then we'll work on this one. I recommend you start stitching at a side seam here so that you can make sure the folded bit is perfectly in line with the bottom bit. So your seam line should be straight and matching up perfectly along the side there. Then I'm gonna, similar to how we finished these seams, I'm gonna use the left edge of my presser foot and then make a very wide stitch length so that my needle is running very close to the edge of this, and then it is consistent around the whole bag. Just take your time and make sure everything is flat. Since you've pressed this in place, everything should be lying flat, and you can just hold your fabric here and feed it through. So that has been stitched down. You can see on the inside here, it's nice and finished. But now we are going to run a stitching line around here, just about the same distance from the opening as this one is. So let's see what we have here. We're sitting at about 1/2 inch, so I will do 1/2 inch above there and run that around. So I have marked that line around with tailor's chalk. I suggest you do this since we don't have a clear guide. This is the best way to do it. So I measured 1/2 inch above this, and then that equated to 3 inches below the top. So I just measured 3 inches below around and marked that. Right, so there you have it. If you're using chalk, just run your iron over this and it will disappear. But now we have a channel that we can thread our ribbon through. I found this bias tape at, well, I don't think it's true bias tape, but anyways, I found this at a secondhand store and I think we can use that for this project. So what I'm going to do to start is actually fold it in half so that the raw edges are enclosed. I'll tuck in this edge here, fold that in half, and then run a stitching line along here, and then that way all the raw edges are enclosed and I can use this as ribbon. Now, as for how much you need, let's measure this bag here. 16.5 inches wide. Let's cut, so we'll need 2 lengths. Let's cut 2 lengths at 38 inches. I ended up cutting 2 lengths at 41 inches. I have assumed that I will fold it in by 1/2 inch on both ends, so then my total length will be 40 inches. So like I mentioned, we will fold those shorter edges in and then fold it lengthwise, and I'll run a top stitching line along here and down here for the length of the ribbon. So I've sewn down that tape. Now we can go ahead and feed this into the bag. So how these will sit is one will lay like this with ends out this side, and then the other one will lay in the opposite direction with ends poking out on the other side. So how I will do this is I will just use a safety pin and thread this through that channel that we sewed. So you'll just pop it in there. And it's important that you don't twist this. You want it to sit flat. It'll look a lot neater and operate a bit better that way. So I started on the other side and I'm approaching this opening. You will just keep channeling your ribbon past this opening like that. So now I have them both coming out that same side. A good thing to do at this point would either be to stitch these together so that they can't slide back through this hole, or you can simply knot them together and then they shouldn't slip back through. Okay, now you will guide the other ribbon through the other hole. So here is the finished bag. I have given it a good press, and you can see it really makes the bag look so much more professional once it's pressed. So this is the box corner here that we made, and I've pressed that under. Yeah, so I fold that under there, and then when you go to fill the bag, it will sit nice and flat on the bottom there. So this is the bag. I'm sorry I messed up those initial measurements, but I will pop in some footage when I edit this of the one bag size. It's the exact same concept, just different sizes. All right, thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. If you like this video, found it helpful, I would love it if you could like the video, share it, or consider subscribing. Have a wonderful day.